Friday, October 11th, and we have the series Journey into WX with Wolfgang starting up again. We're on series session number 4, and we're back to basic concepts here. Not necessarily basic beginner, but I mean it's eye openers. How's that? So, Wolfgang, take it away. Thanks again for doing these, because I think it's really helpful.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for the guys who's attending now. I don't know which side of the clock are you, but there's good morning, good afternoon, good evening kind of thing. Welcome. Today we're going to go into what they call programming concepts in WINDEV. What boils down to is basic stuff, which kind of thing when you start learning to program, you should know. So, but I think it's very important to get that down also before you go into heavy stuff, just so you know where different things are and how it gets declared and that. And if you get that right, then the rest of the programming becomes a bit easier. I made one of the mistakes when I started off. I jumped right into looking at the classes and how do you do the select statements and all kind of other fancy stuff. But when I wanted to start doing something simple, just to concate a string on the window, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're trying to do the ampersand sign because that's how you'd learned it from the other one, whereas this one is different. And now you're clipping the strings and you don't need to clip it, etc., etc. So there's little bits and pieces which just make life easier if you know it off bat. So you can then concentrate on the core idea of your program without worrying about the basics. So I think that's quite important just to go through it. I think the old hands at this game in WINDEV will kind of yawn at it, but I think it's if you're new to this game, it kind of becomes important to you. So let me get the next slide up. So what we're going to do is today, I'm going to just run through what we're going to do, that you know what's the anticipation today. We're going to be looking at different ways of declaring variables, and also the different types of variables and where their scope lies in different places in WINDEV itself. And then we're going to have a look at the main statements, like conditional statements, loop statements, the main thing of your files, and then the myself keyword, which is quite handy to have around. And we're going to go look at procedures and functions, how the procedures are a bit differently declared in WINDEV, which caught me in the beginning, which you just have to keep eye on, and then also decide where you want to have it, local or global. That I think most advanced programs know all about it, but I think in the WINDEV context, it's might be a good idea to show you where the different places are, because they tend to have the word global and a different kind of meaning. There's a global, and there's a global to the procedure, and then you've got the local ones. But anyway, we'll go into that now. Then processing the variables, how to work with string values, the concatenating, putting two strings together, that kind of thing, and then how to work numeric values towards screen display, and also just calculating things. How to work with currencies, which is quite interesting if you're going to work with that, and then dates and times, which is also handy to know how to do it. And that's basically then, and then we can have a bit of a question session afterwards.
What a lineup, man, alive.
Okay, so let's start at the first. What I've done is I've gone a little bit of a quickie way, and I just took one of the tutorials what they've got, the program concepts, because why should I do it all over again if they've got a nice one which comes with WINDEV as lessons. So you go and find it basically in the WINDEV. If you go and look at the project section, just to show you there in the tutorial section, and we're looking at this one, number 3, programming concepts, which kind of leads into most of the things what I'm going to talk about today. So I've opened that, and the main window is basically that, which is basically a drop-down list, but that's not what we're looking at today. Now, declaring different types of variables. WINDEV proposes kind of several different kind of variables. They've got Boolean variables, integers, real, currency, strings, dates and times. They even got a duration variable, and then also they've got arrays, structures and stuff like that, which the advanced structures and arrays I'm not going to go today in. We're going to just use the basics ones today. And just to jump into straight away, if we're going to go look at how to declare a variable, it's very easy. You just say the name of the variable is, the keyword is, and then the variable type. So my new variable is, say example, a string, and there you go. Because I'm using a programming charter, it tends to prefix it on that it's a global and that's a string. Then, like example, if you want to go declare more than one variable, like example I, comma, j, comma, ij is, then you can say these are my integers. So you can then put a row of them next to each other and declare the same type of variable in one go. So those three, I and j and k, using the integers. Then the other thing you can do is, for example, if you have counter, a variable called counter is, and then you can say that's an integer, but at the same time you can initialize it as a variable. Okay. Now, just to give a note of this one, if you declare anything in WINDEV, like the previous development environments, it gets a kind of a, it's not a null, because a null in this environment is a null, versus many of the other environments I've been working with, it's not there wasn't a null, but it is a clear string, or as if you say, if this string is equals apostrophe apostrophe, that means there's nothing in there, where integers are automatically declared as zeros. So if you don't like that idea, you can automatically declare it by using the equal sign and something. So example, this string we can say equals, and we can say that is Arnold. Okay, so then it gets declared and initialized at the same time. The same, you get what we call a Boolean, like some is it okay is a Boolean, and you can say that okay is true. So this one will only take the true false statement. Okay, and as simple as that is how you declare the variables in WINDEV. Okay, now we're getting to the next part where we're going to be talking about where their scope is, and the scope is basically where these variables are going to be seen throughout your application. As you see yourself, if we go to the actual application and you stand over here and you push the F2, you get into this part here, which is sitting right next to the application what you're busy developing. It opens up what we call the application global initialization area. WINDEV tends to also call this a global variable area, and this is global to the whole project, and it can be seen by all your functions, which is over here in your classes and your Windows defined and help reports and etc. So if you declare it inside the project section, as you can see, this little P which shows on the top of the project, it is then seen by all the different procedures and functions in Windows you've got. So this is what we call the global area of where you declare the global variables. Just once again, these variables can be used in all processes of the project and project elements, which is basically Windows, reports, and so on. Okay. All right, that is the one global, which is kind of confusing because when you read the WINDEV English manuals, they talk about global, but you have to be careful because this is the one global. And then when you get to the Windows section and you stand in the window itself and you push F2, you get can you believe it? Another global. But this global is slightly different in the sense that it is Windows, the variables which you declare here. So example, if we're going to say put another one here, this string is string equals something, This one is then global to this particular window structure. So what I'm saying is that those can be only used in the process of this window and any of the Windows elements and control elements. Okay, if that makes sense. So that means if I have yes.
So how can you tell by looking at the GS which one it is? I mean, how do you know if it's global or global local? I mean,
the nice thing about this is, okay, this is a program charter that automatically puts a GS, which says global string. But let's just drop something here quickly. Let's do a creation, something like, for example, a static here, dump it here, and if you go in there, and now you go and say, for example, GS, you've got two of them over here. The string, remember, this is global to this window, and this is now global to the main global. So if you go and put there, say now it's equal to something else, okay, and you're not too sure yourself, what I tend to do is I just stand on it, and there's a trick to it. You just push the F2 button and it pops straight away to where it was originally declared. Okay, so in this case you'll see it pops up and it gets to the P section, which is means the application, the whole global, I say the big global one, or I don't know for a better word, because they tend to have the concept of global variables that can be global to the project in the whole thing. Maybe this is, we can call this a project global, and the other one is your
procedure
Windows global, or your procedure global. Okay, so what I do is I tend to, if you're not too sure where it is, you just push F2, it will jump to the particular variable. Okay, and if I go do the other one, like example, GS this string, and you redeclare it with something else again, and you're not too sure where it comes from, and you stand on it and you just push F2 and you'll see global declaration of this window. Okay.
Well, can you change the what do you call that, the
programming
charter, so that
yes,
you can tell the difference between them?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can. You go to the project.
I wonder what people use to make it look different. You know.
Once you get used to that fact, it becomes a non-issue really, to me, because you get used to what you've declared locally and where you get the other one, and also by just standing over here, you tend to know where it's coming from by just pushing F2, and you say, oh, okay, then you can put Control F2 and goes pops right back where you were left off. So it becomes a non-issue to find out where the variable is coming from.
Now, when you define variables like global ones like that, are there the difference between threaded globals and non-threaded globals?
Okay, that's kind of a bit of a advanced side of things. But what it boils down to is, if you are coding just normally like this, it tends to be all in one thread, unless you use a keyword function which tells you to spawn it off as a separate thread. Then it becomes a separate variable itself. And you can then do two things. You can start a new thread without context or with context. So you can copy the variable what you've got with a value right now into it, and then it runs on its own from there on, and it doesn't affect anything else. Or you can basically do it without context. It means it still stays by the global one. If I make sense. All right. So this is now how you do it. Then if you end up doing something silly, so for example, we go back here and we gonna go and declare pretty much, what was it other string what I called again? I'm just trying to remember the name. My new variable. Okay. What's nice about WINDEV is if you say my new variable equals something, is new string, that means you're redeclaring it, and you enter it. Come on, just string. Come on. What's wrong with you? And you save that. My new variable, is it my new variable? It then comes up, hold on, let me just take this one away because it's giving an error there. If it comes up and says, hey, you've just declared another variable, and it's warning you that in the global, the project global is going to be overridden or hidden away because of your local declaration of this variable. So if you pop up a new variable which is equivalent to the project global one, then you get a little warning message down at the bottom. You're saying declaring of global variable, my new variable hides the global variable. So that means this overrides the global one, and then use your code what you write here will be using that one, not the global one. Okay. Just that you know about it. You can override it by using another one, but yeah. All right. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is basically you're going to have different statements to make your project work very nicely. So I'm going to just delete that out and find. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just start first with this. The main statements of the Wlanguage. We're going to go into that now. There is what we call conditional statements. In WINDEV, it's quite easy to use conditional statements. You just say if, say example, my new variable, new variable equals, say example, Arnold, and you just hit the enter key and it will automatically complete the rest for you and does a code folding for you. So you can do something like that and then say info.
It's really nice.
That is correct. And then you close it. And then straight away you can say, go and test this thing. You run that program, okay, saying this string is unknown as accessible. Which one is that one? Oh, because I was messing around. Let me just kill that quickly. That goes when you just writing code without thinking what you're doing. So let's just go run this little procedure, and you'll see there pops up this message which says that is correct. Okay, and then of course there you go, and you can stop the program. Now this is as easy as that. Just be warned, not warned, WINDEV does not work like the previous development environment where I have to declare the length of the string. It automatically works on another convention, which is basically what you declare it is automatically what the length is, and you can assign a bigger string and add onto it, and it will just expand and contract accordingly. So what's nice about that is when you get to this point over here, let's go quickly do the static one here again. Let's just go to the, I'm going to just take it out of the global section of the window. I'm going to put it into the initialization of the static variable. And so if it's that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that string is now, example, shown to the put into the static variable. Then I'm going to say hello, and then I just put a space there, and now I just put a plus, and then my new variable, and as simple as that. So what it does is you don't have to do any clip or fancy things here. You just put what you want to do, and then you put a plus. If you have declared with spaces in front and afterwards, it will then automatically put it there. But because I know this code is just straightforward, then you just add it like that. But if you are concerned about having spaces where you don't want, all you do is put no space, and you open and close the brackets, and then what happens is any leading and trailing spaces will be automatically truncated. But in this case, we are not having that issue, so there you go.
Hey,
so we're going to save it.
So if you
Yep.
have like hello with that variable and then you do a plus after that and put like an exclamation point, do you
Yes, you
have
can do
to
it straight away afterwards.
do the no? Yeah, do you have to do the no space, or does that
No,
clip
because
automatically?
it all depends how you declare this variable. If you know this variable is always assigned by you and you controlling it, and you
Uh-huh.
know you're never going to use a space before and after, then you don't bother. But if it's a, like example, a screen entry where an end user can add something in, you don't know if that end user is going to put that extra space. Then you might want to do the no space.
Oh,
Let's
because the
do that.
string is the size of the whatever the
Yeah.
value is. Okay.
There we go. See, it says hello
Nice.
Arnold.
Okay.
Okay. Now, that's as simple as that. That's how the if statement. Then we're going to go into the next one. I'm going to go and just delete this. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. The if statement is quite nice, but oh, let me just put it back again. And if you want to do an else, all you do is put an else, and of course you can do any other statement. That's quite obvious. There's no fancy curly brackets with Java and other languages. You just yeah, you just do it like this. Then the language where I came from used to be called a case statement. Now I have to get used to the fact that it's slightly different here. It's called a switch, which is a case statement. And you can say case a switch. Then you can then put in, as an example, a variable here. I'm going to just do it easier by just saying my choice here is int equals, and I'm going to make one here. Just quickly declare one here, and I say my choice, just for easy sake. Obviously, my choice will be whatever you want to bring from a database, wherever, but just to get the point across. My choice, and if it's case number 1, then you can say I'm going to make my parameter equals, let's say, AAA, and you just hit the enter key, and then you can say case 2. And if you want to have more than one case, you just put a comma and say, okay, if it's 3, so if it's a value of 2 and 3, it will then be that variable here. I've displayed that. And if none of the others fit the case, you can then say unknown, say example. And that's basically your case statement. Now to run it just quickly, I'm going to run it. Because we choose 1, we should get 1. There you go. And if I change it to, see how easy it is to test also your app, Go, then 2 will be that. And obviously, if I go and do now 3, it should give me still the BBB. There you go. And if you do any other number, which is not there, it will be unknown. Okay, that's your case statement. So we've talked about if and case statements, which is handy to do what your program logic and give you some brains in your software. The other thing what most people use in the end of the day is what we call loop statements. So we get to the loop statements now. Let's take that out. Loop statements is quite easy. You just put loop and you hit the enter key, then you straight away got your end and start put in place, and then you can say something to the effect that let's say count is integer, and then you say my count is over here. Okay, and oh no, sorry, I'm doing the wrong count over here. Sorry, I've got it in the wrong place, so let me not confuse you too much. And then you can say plus plus, and if okay, it's not in count. There you go. If in count is bigger than say 10, you can do your break. Okay, and in the meantime, we're gonna do no name equals what end count is, just to show you. Okay, so if you run the program, before I do that, I'm going to just remove that fancy animation. Where is it now? I just have to remember where that animation is. In the styles. Because I don't like that animation, because it brings up, you know, I don't know if you saw it or not, it flips in like that. I can't remember where it is now. Because I don't usually have it in. Anyway, so let's just run it there just to show you. Go. And of course it flips in, and it's too slow because we can see it just goes very quickly. Let's just oh no, we're in the initialization section. Of course you won't see that happening then, but the idea behind it is that when it gets to that point, it will then stop and break out of it. Okay, the other way you can do the loop is basically you, instead of putting this break in here, you can say something to that case. Instead of a loop, you say while end count is less than 10. So then you can take that section over here out. Okay. The other thing you can also do is instead of having the while on top, because that is a breakpoint on top of the loop, and if you want to have the breakpoint at the bottom of the loop, all you do is take the while and put it down at the bottom, and you put the loop on top. Okay. Oops. Do while. That has to be a do while at the bottom. Okay. So then you loop through, and it shows, and when it gets to that count is bigger than 10, it will also break out. Okay. So the nice thing about this,
there's no end to that loop. The do while is the end of the loop.
That's the end of it, because the one, if you put the while on top, the conditional testing is done right before the loop gets entered. If you do it at the bottom, it does all the code first, and then it will then do the conditional check, and if it fails, it will carry on working. Otherwise, it loops to the top again.
So, but there's no like a folding. What do you call that? You know, it doesn't bracket it together. Then, kind of like.
No, you don't need to bracket. What do you mean? If you want to do more than one condition?
No, I just it kind of looks like it doesn't end. I just but I see where it's going. Okay.
Yeah, you say loop.
That's tricky. I like that though.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. The other way you can do it. The nice thing, just to note, if I put loop end, the nice thing about this program language also warns you, hey, no break, no return, no result inside the loop. So this is when you're going to run this code, it's going to run forever. You have to use an end task kind of thing to get out of this one. So the nice thing about it, it warns you. But there's another loop one is what we call for. Then you can do this, say end count is basically then kind of equals 1 to 10. And you can take that one out because the count is happening there. Mm-hmm. All right. So there's more than one way you can implement the loop. There is many other parts to the loop. A loop is quite a complicated thing. It can do your looping through your files, structures, arrays, indexes and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go into all that, but just to be suffice that the loop does quite a lot of things there. So the for end is for a specific number type of iteration, so that's the way that one works. While end is for a specific number of iterations whose exit condition is checked at the beginning of the loop. And then if you've got the loop end, the plain loop end, that is for undefined number of iterations whose what the condition is only gets exited if it's checked inside the loop, and then you have to use a break statement to get out of it, or return the result.
So you see the code folding right there. That's why I was saying with the loop and the do while there was no code folding. That's what threw me off a little bit. That I would have expected.
You're talking about the loop do while. Okay, let's just go back there again.
It's like if you
do while in count less than 10.
See, it takes the code folding away.
I didn't notice. Oh, okay. I didn't notice that. But that's a legal statement. Because if you can run it, it will do the thing. And
so if you hit an N, put an N at the end, does it put a code folding in it, or does it make it illegal?
Sorry, the end. So, no. The do while is the end of it.
Yeah, I know. I was looking for the code folding. That's all. But
yeah. So this one will be
cool. I just was wondering.
Just one thing, it will never end in a way here because I don't have a counter in here. Okay. So that, because if I don't do the count, it will always be 0 because it's declared as 0. It will always be small. It will loop forever. So in this case, it will work now. It will come up and stop at 10. Okay. Cool. All right. I think we've gone through the loops.
Pete says you can write it as a while n count less than 10 instead of a loop. So you can do your while up on top or something.
Yes, that's what I showed earlier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you can actually take that out. But that once again, this depends. If you want to test a condition before you do something, then you want to have it up on top. But if you want to do something before you test the condition, you'll have the while at the bottom.
Right.
So it all depends what you want to achieve in the code. So if it has to do something before you actually do the end without looping, then you put it in the end. But if you want to do something, it has to have, for example, if it has got no stock, then there's no point of looping through it because you have no stock to issue, kind of thing. So you might want to have the while check right at the beginning of the loop. Okay.
Yeah, like you said, you have to open your mind on how they designed this because you'll be fighting yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because you tend to want to do it slightly different.
Yeah, you think, hey, I want my statement always up on top, there. So
while we at it, just to come to it, just to mention that this is what we call a comment block, and if you hit the enter, you can carry on, then adding more code, etc. But from the programming language I got from it was, the exclamation mark, and this one is just backslashes. So just that you know about it, that's how you add in your comments. And to take it in and out, you can write some, like example, if you want to take that, you can put control backslash. Come on, no one doesn't want to. It's maybe because I'm doing screen sharing and somehow it doesn't want to. Doesn't want to comment it out. Control backslash usually works. But this time it doesn't.
Control slash, I think, the one that by the shift.
Yeah, there. Yeah. Oh yes. Just I keep forgetting once in a while. The other thing you must take note is it's not the backslash on your main keyboard; it's on the number keyboard. There you go. And then when you want to undo it, you Control Shift and you do it again, and it'll untake it out for you. All right. Now we're getting to.
Yeah, thank God that's the same. That's the same in the other language. So.
Yeah. Okay.
So some things I can bring across.
Yeah, some things we can. Then we're going to talk about quickly the myself keyword. Myself keyword is one what you can use in place for, instead of writing this the whole time, saying something. Let's give an example over here. I'm going to just kill this out, make it very simple. You can say myself equals say example new info, and then what happens is myself is always referring to the control you're busy with. So in this case, this is a static string on the screen. So if you look at over here, it will be referring to this thing. When you run it, it will then automatically populate with that information in there. It doesn't doesn't seem to be quite apparent now why you would want to use myself. But say example, you've got let's create another static here. You've got two statics here. Okay, now we want to go and now make it a little bit more complicated. What we're going to do is this one is called static number name no name 2, and this is the static no name 1. Now let's go and do something. I'm going to do two things now at the same time, because we're going to talk about procedures and functions also. But I'm going to start by saying this one is initialized, say example, myself equals, let's call it my account. All right. And I haven't got my account declared. Let me quickly do a my account declared right on top. Is int, and I'll make it straight away 1. All right. So just keep your head about it. What we've done is now on the global of the window, we create a new variable called my account, and we just initialize as 1. Now what I'm going to do is over here and say myself is count. Okay. What you can do, say my account is, just to show you what I want to do down the line, is plus plus. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is just going to copy those two lines out and go straight to the static 2 and do the same thing. Now obviously at this point in time myself is not really going to make a difference, because you're going to say, I can just as well have said instead of myself, I could have put it stc underscore name 1, and this one I could have done is stc no name number 2. But we're going to get to that. Let me just run it quickly. Obviously, when you run it first, it will be initialized 1. Remember, then we added 1. That will be 2. So the static 1 will be 2, and we then do the same thing and add it 2. 1 again, and it will be number 3. Now, let's go and talk about functions procedures, and that's where this comes now handy. Now there again, you've got basically different functions and procedures. So that's just like any other programming language. A procedure is one what you can pass parameters or no parameters, but it doesn't return a value, whereas a function always returns some result. In WINDEV we would call that differently. A procedure will use a keyword return, and if you're using a function, it will return a result. Okay, and that's otherwise a declaration from a procedure is exactly the same. The only difference you'll pick it up that is different is to the one will say return, the other one says a result. Okay, which I'll show you now. Then once again, we can declare global procedures, and that's where you do it over here, and you can create a set of new procedures, and you click over here and you can say my global procedures, a collection of them, and you can add in over here and just save that as a collection, and then you see over here, and I can say new global procedure, and I can say my proc new, let's just call it that. Now there it is, and in this case, if it's a procedure only, I would just do a return, whatever my calculations is. I do I is int equals 1, whatever calculations you want to do in here. All right. Oh, I've got a, see over here, it tells me I'm hiding the global one, which is quite clever. Let me just do a I2 just to make it different. So that is how a procedure works. Now if you want to do another one, this one I'm going to say my function new, and I'm going to add it, and as you can see it's sitting in the global section, and there's my proc1, and I'm going to make another one. In this case I'm going to say I3 is int equals whatever number, and this time instead of saying return I'm going to say result is I3. Sorry, I3. That's how you know the difference between a procedure and a function. Now, all these procedures I've just declared over here on the side here is what we call global procedures. And once again, this is available throughout your whole project in Windows, in reports, and other procedures which you've got there. And there's no mapping or anything. You just call it. You don't have to fuss about tree, what we call a tree structure. This one calls that one, etc. You just call it. Okay. Versus
collection, that's just an organizational thing.
Yes, yes. So what you guys, you can put all your say financial calculations as a collection over here, and the next group you call it my security check thing, and so forth. So it just helps you to collect it together. Okay.
Okay. But to
yeah,
call
it's also important you start sharing stuff with the SEM because you can share the collection.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
and you can solidify a collection and keep it together and say, okay, that's locked down, and nobody can change it in the SEM. Good point there. All right. So that's the difference between the two. Now, how do you decide which one is which to use? Like I kind of hinted already, if you put it over here, it's available in the whole project and any Windows procedures or reports you design. Whereas if you put it inside over here, which sometimes in the beginning, it's my head banger, I couldn't understand where to do local procedures, and I didn't want it all the time in global. What you do is you go over here, and one of the easiest ways to do that is to go and stand where you want to kind of do it, and you just highlight it the whole lot, and you right click it and say create a new local procedure. If you say global, it will then create a global, but we want to just create a local one. So you create a local one and you give it a name, my counter. And that's where this myself becomes handy, because now we put it as my counter, and there's your procedure, and that you can see in your Project Explorer. Here you go to the window and you can see your local procedures here. The other way to declare a local procedure is to go and stand here and say new local procedure. Okay, now coming back to this, I've got that. I'm going to just copy that. I'm going to be lazy. Copy, and I go back out, and I go to the static 2, and I'm going to just replace it and put it. Now let's run this program again, and you get the same result. Because now what happens is it runs into this one, and it goes to my counter very easily. Once again, F2, it jumps to that procedure, and you can read through it and look at it nicely and say, oh, counted. But now, because you're using the same counter for different places, you don't really know what myself is. It all depends which control on your window is calling it, and that's where myself comes into its own being, because it will know who's calling it. Oh, it's my static display control, so let's add it to there. And we can do that quite easily by doing quickly debug on the side. It wasn't part of the talk today, but let's do that. Go. And then what happens, it freezes, and you'll see you're in a debug mode with the chevron signs here, and it also kind of reminds you over here you're debugging, and then you automatically go into the debugger mode. This tab on your ribbon pops up and shows that you are. Down at the bottom, you can then step through your code, and at any time you hover on your code and you say, oh, my count is 0 at the moment, because you haven't assigned it yet. And as you click across, you'll see it's now number 1. Click next. Now, as you can see, it goes to the initialization of the static variable number 1, and you see it's a counter, and it pops through to the counter, and you'll see counter is still 1, but after I go past it, it will increment it, and at the same time, at this moment, it myself is a static variable, and you update it accordingly. And you go next one, it pops to the next one. You see this is still the no name one, and as you go to the next one, you'll see there's number 2, and it once again calls it and goes through it, and it's still number 2. And when you get through, it will be number 3. And once you're done, you should see the screen popping up. The debugger is very handy. So that's the difference between the global and local different variables, and where the myself keyword comes kind of handy when you want to start using the same procedure. In my previous programming, it was called routines. In this case, it's not routines, it's just procedures, which is kind of nicer. I like it more because it becomes basically a full-blown function and or a procedure, which allows you to pass parameters and pass back and etc. So you can kind of self-contain it on its own. All right. Now, calling procedures and the passing of the parameters. You'll notice that the procedure manages the parameters, and parameters can be mandatory or optional. Now, what I mean by that is WINDEV has got a little bit of a catch-22. So I can pass parameters. So in this case, I can say my first parameter 1, and then I can say, and I can have another parameter, number 2. In this case, straight away it warns you wherever you called my counter is no more going to be working, because it's expecting 2 parameters, because this is what we call mandatory. It has to be there to you can't omit it, basically. So it's mandatory. So what you can do is over here, so my account, I'm going to just add equals, and you can say plus equals, right? Mandatory. Yeah. Is my English so terrible? Okay, so we can do that, and then you can change it on the fly. Now, obviously, it's warning you because you've got 2 places where it's no more telling what you're saying on the mandatory point of view. What you can do is now, that's where WINDEV caught me in the beginning, because my other previous ones, you can mix the mandatory or the required ones with ones which optional by saying this one is equal to 0, oopsie, and then that one. But WINDEV has got a slight caveat here, because it expects you to do all the mandatory first and then all the optionals afterwards. Once you start bringing in optional parameters, it must continue as optional parameters. You can't put another mandatory after that one. So you can't go and say this, because it's going to get very unhappy for you. Parameter without optional value used after parameters with optional value. Okay. So if you want to have an optional, you're going to do it rather that way around. So the first one is optional, the second one, the first one is required, and the second one is optional. Got it? That's the catch. All right.
Got it. You know, they're not, WINDEV's not the only thing that language that does, you know, that.
Yeah, every language has got its caveats, things which you have to watch out for. There's another thing which I'm not going to go too much into it, but there is another option you have. You can actually put comma and you can put a star there. That means you can have as many parameters thereafter. But there's a way around to handle it. But just know about it that it's possible.
Wolfgang.
Yes.
Hello. Hi. This
yes.
is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Using myself in a procedure like that can be a little dangerous, because that takes on the object that's calling it.
Yes.
So if you happen to be in the select method of a table and call my counter, that myself is going to become the row of the table.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be really careful about dropping myselfs in and around things.
Yes, that's the whole point.
You're better to send the actual object that you want as a parameter.
Yes, yes. But like I say, like example, a good place you don't really want to use anything else. As myself is an example, if you want to reposition everything on the screen, so you'll do the XY offset, that kind of thing. myself is going to be
if it's
very
a
handy.
generic enough use of the myself, but you have to remember, you know, you're doing a basic presentation here, and that myself is a real trap for a basic
yes and no
application.
Yes and no. It depends how you want to use it. If you're going to use it in tables and etc., you have to be aware of the fact that it changes with the rows and columns.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's not really
normal use.
Yeah. That is also not really a trap. It's actually referring to the right column and row and kind of things. But you have to be aware of the fact that it depends where the focus is and which controller is getting the control, basically.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of code where you know, whether it's myself or self dot or something like that is used a lot, and I guess it's in context is what
in the proper context it's really useful.
Yes.
But in a generic application like that, where this could be called from anywhere, and you really don't have a control over who that myself is, you could break things and not understand why you're breaking. I'm just bringing up the point to make sure that the user knows that myself, that can point to anything. In this
no, it doesn't point to anything. It depends which control is it coming from. It's not kind of up in the air. It really is where the focus on which control is lost. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Hey, is there a concept of on procedures? Is there a concept of private or virtual? There is.
Yeah, that's part of classes, but you also got the chance of doing it over here. You could do protected and public and private kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Okay.
All right. Which is kind of advanced stuff, but yeah.
Well, the only reason I asked is because he says, you know, users can use this. Maybe you protect it or make it private so that you know when.
The reason why, okay, we get to the other part, which myself becomes handy is also if you got an edit block in your over here. If you got to edit, it all depends. Like I say, it all depends what you want to achieve. Now, there's an edit no name. I'm going to just leave that edit control. I'm not going to rename it. Now, just to show you what I'm talking about, and you can call it and kind of generically, if you want to, you can say myself, and that's where this becomes very handy. You can change a color, you can change quite a lot of things, but in this case I'm going to just say change a caption, and you can do that on the fly. And that I've used, for example, where I've got a context list, say example, just for, I can't think of a better idea now, a context where you say name, but depending on the context, if it's a company, you want to put company name. Or if it's an individual, you choose the individual option. The contact will be not the company, but will be a individual. So what you can say, name, and then if, let's just do that, if statement again, I equals 1, and then else. And this time it will be a company. So just for easy sake, I'm not saying this is how I would do the database, but just more for explanatory purposes. Now, okay, because I've got two. Remember, we changed this. You have to have one parameter at least, because the second one is optional. And this time I make it, say, 5. All right, and go. And you'll see I've got debugging. Let's just go on. Now, as you can see, it says company, because by default we didn't declare I as anything. I think it's a 0, so it defaulted to else, which is company. And obviously, as you saw our procedure where we did the myself, we came as 1, and we added on the first one, I think 2, that will be 3, and then we added, I think, a 5. Then that will be 5, that will be 8 plus a 1. Okay, if you look at the code over here, it's getting confusing, but I have a counter still in here plus the parameters. Okay. So this is where myself comes handy at times, and that's the reason why I was going down the garden path over here in the show, that you can change your captions and your color of it and etc. by using myself and the caption and whatever. Okay. There is like it was anything, I think you have to look what you want to do and what you want to get done, and use it appropriately. And it obviously can be also dangerous, like any other piece of code, I think.
I think the danger comes into play is not when you have the code like that, but when you put it into a procedure that other things can call. I think that's what Chris was getting to, because something else could call it that you don't know what the object was necessarily. Yeah,
that's it. You see, and that's like with anything. I think you have to use it correctly for what it is intended for. And if you do that, then you're fine. Of course, anything, if you do it wrong, it also go wrong. What was okay? Process strings, I've done through it more or less. It's just like a plus sign, as we've talked about. The calling of procedures, we've done more or less. Now processing strings, I'm just trying to think what, I'm just looking at my slide quickly. Conditional statements, loop statements we've talked about, myself. Next, okay, with the difference between procedure and functions, because the one returns a return, the other one a result, and global and local procedures. Passing of parameters, what you must look out for, we spoke about, and we spoke about the strings. Now we're talking about numeric values and etc. Okay, all right, let's just go through that. Numeric values, again, it's quite straightforward. There's no real surprise there. You can assign it to that and say, example, 1 plus 5, whatever, and then you get your answer basically. And if you say go, I'll just take this off, and you'll see it gets assigned. That's 6. There's nothing really fancy about it. The thing is, you can assign it. You can even go as far as just like my previous environment, we can have something to the effect, like example, my number is string equals, and you can make it 5 here, and then say my number. And WINDEV will automatically retypecast this or reassign it to a real internally and add that one to it and then show it without you having to worry about. Hold on, I lie, because it's treating it as a, you should actually do it first as a intermediary is int, because your display static is impervious to what it is. It will follow a certain rule. You can check that up. So if you put this code over here, oopsie, and then put it there, and then say my int over there, it should then, if I remember correctly, it does it correctly. Nope, I lie. Just trying to remember, there was something to it. It should. Oh no, that's the thing. Yeah, I'm getting it myself mixed up here. There is a difference between the two. Now, to get around that, I think you put it into brackets here, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. I can't remember exactly myself. I've done it quite some time back. Yep, it's not that way. There's a way around to force it, because at the moment it's viewing it as a string, so it adds it. So 1, then it puts a 5 there. I'm just trying to remember how it was done again. I wanted to show you that, but now I'm getting myself tied up. No, I can't remember now. Can anybody remember how to bypass that? I can't remember now.
Just put a val in front of the paren. In other words, you got to convert it.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, there you go.
So it's not self-casting, is what you're saying.
Yeah, in this case, yeah.
So be careful on that. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm just getting myself confused, yeah. Because what happens is WINDEV, if you have a string involved, it automatically is what we call concatenating it as a string the whole time. So just be aware of it. And because this one is, it's not fussy about what it gets, it just displays it. It's your display on the screen, and it will go accordingly. Okay. There's other functions of what you can use, like example the integer part and the decimal part. So you can have something divided by something, so it will automatically extract the integer part and that you can look up all the different functions that you've got and you can get. Now let's just go and have a quick look at reals and that type of thing. Real is quite interesting also. What I'm trying to go and say now, there is you have to be careful with reals, and because I know I've bumped across some development work which somebody says X is real, and then they do a whole lot of calculations as for monetary purposes, and then somewhere along the line it doesn't kind of give a correct answer. So let's do this one over here and say X equals say 18.6 minus 8.6, and then say minus 10. And then what we do is put that to that equals to X. Now we do the same calculations. And this time we're going to say this is my currency. And we just change that to number 2. Okay. So my first static one we're going to use basic reals, and other one we're going to use a currency. And what all we do is saying we got $18.06 minus $8.06 and minus $10, and then see what happens. Okay, you can't see it here, but it has a number right down at the bottom. Okay, I don't have it big enough. Let's see if, let me just delete that part here. You can see it, it doesn't round enough. It doesn't say 00. There you go. So be aware of that fact that if you're playing around with reals in monetary sense, you can get yourself tied up and you get your calculations wrong. So be aware of it, and then use a currency, or the other one you can use is a numeric. Okay. Does it make sense?
Is there such a thing as decimal? Because
yes, I have. Let's go. So, they don't call it decimal in their language. They call it numeric.
Numeric. Okay.
Numeric. Okay. So if you run this one. Let's just stop the previous test quickly. Go again. There you go. That was also correct. Okay. Now, just the difference between, if I remember correctly, numeric currency goes to 15 significant digits, whereas numeric can go through 32 digits for integer part and 6 digits for the decimal part. I tend to use a numeric instead of the currency. That's my personal choice. but I know people use the currency. But just be aware of it. If you do calculations, try and avoid the real in between when you're doing monetary stuff, because it tends to not round it up correctly, as you can see. Same calculation. And do you agree with me? If you look at that mathematics here, if you take 18.6 minus 8.6 which is, and minus 10, it should be 0 on the dot, but it doesn't. Okay.
Crazy. But yeah,
that's one of the gotchas I got.
I think
so.
Yeah, I think the reals that affect me now in the other environment. Yeah, people say use decimals.
Yeah, decimals, and that's maybe the reason why I'm using numbering, because that's equivalent to the decimal.
Same kind of idea. Yeah.
There you go. Okay, now the last part I'm going to get to is dates and times. Dates and times is a nice, interesting beast on its own. Let me just kill that over here, and we're going to just create edit box. Just be aware of the edit box. You've got in here, you've got a very nice thing. You can then set to the date, and you can say define as by project. If you say define by project, it will be defined as by the project. And if you go to, I think it's over here, there we go, it will be defined whatever the setting is over here. So in this case, it will be displayed as month, day, year. Okay. If you don't like it, you can change it here. But this tends to, I think it follows what your computer setup is. So it automatically follows those rules. Unless you say override it, and I want it to always be this way around. Okay, but if you leave it that way, that's, oh, there it is. It says in plain English, the settings define the logistic options of the operating system, like I said. But if you override it with that, it will be fixed that way accordingly. So just be aware of that. So this will be automatically, and because I'm English, it's day, month, year. The Americans do the other way around. Anyway, so you can then go into that and again override it on the over here if you want to, and the same there. But try and always leave the return value the way it is, because I know some people go and change this, but this is going to mess you around in the sense that when WINDEV will store it in the database incorrectly and retrieve it incorrectly. So just leave the return value kind of pretty much what it is, because it will then rearrange it accordingly to the hyperfile and SQL standards on the back end what you got. All right. Now, nice thing about let me create a variable quickly, global variable here, which makes life so much nicer when you work with this. Okay, I've deleted. Let me just put it back again. Create just a new one. My date. Let's call it my data. Is date. Okay, you got the date variable, you got the time variable, and then you got the date time variable. Okay. I'm going to work with the date and time because the time and the date is pretty much going to be self-explanatory. The date time is one which you tend to use a lot more often, because many things you want to recall the date and time together. So let's go into that. Now, just take note of it. This is the only exception to the rule on declaring variables. Like example, if you do a declaring of an integer and you don't put a equal sign there, it will automatically default to a 0 or a blank string. Date time is the exception to the rule. By default, it will take the system's date and time, okay, at that given moment, unless you go into your projects and once again you decide somewhere. I'm just trying to remember where. No, it's not in there is a keyword which says override the default way and make it blank, say example, or 0, initialize to 0. Okay, there's a function for it, but I can't remember the function's name. So just be aware that when you declare it like this, it will take the current date and time when it hits at the declaration time. So just to show you, when we run it, let's just change this control to the date and time. Seconds, that you can see the seconds also, and you can see what I'm talking about. And we run it. Why is it? My account. Okay. The reason why, because it dumped a GN in front of it, so it's unhappy about that. So that should be fine. The program charter prefixed it was a GN. Okay, now let's run it again. And if you run it, I didn't do something here. I wanted to still initialize it. EDD equals my date time. All right, that will help if you assign the variable. And you run it, and you'll see automatically it is assigned to the current date and time. All right. Got it? Nice. Seems like everybody got it. Okay, now the part I like about this whole thing, let's go and just drop, which is very handy, which in the beginning I kind of hit my head against it, but soon I found there's a lot of easy way of doing it. Let's put some statics down. I'm going to just put 3 of them. 2 is enough. Nice thing about this part is when you go and say this one equals, and you're going to say my date time. Now what I want to bring is those properties where they're talking about. If you put dot, it brings up a list, and you say just give me the date here. And if I say this one on number 2, let's just go out and on number 2 here, and you say stc number 2 equals my date time dot is time. Now the nice thing about this thing, it automatically splits the 2 up for you, but it doesn't format it for you. So let's just run it. It just puts it all together. Okay, so you see that's 11th of 10th 2013. It's 2030 10 11. So as you can see, it's 1500 hours 22 and 24 seconds and 06. All right. If you want to, you can put time to string. And the nice thing about this is then you pull out that, and you can say I want to have hour. I'm going to have a space with an hour. And I'm going to put my minutes in, and I'm going to say this is my minutes and a space, and I'm going to put my seconds, and I put my seconds, and I'm going to use my, forget about hundredths of a second, and I close it up, and that will format it according to that. If you want to, you say here is the time, and you save it, and the same you can do with that one over here, and this one you can say string date to string open brackets and comma here. This is today's date, double point, and then you can put the day, month, year. And it automatically does it for you. Day 2. All right, and you run it. Oops, okay, I just have to give it more space here. And again, there we go. All right, I think I've more or less covered what I wanted to do today. Hopefully there's a few things which helped people to understand. And then lastly, if there's any other questions related to what we spoke today, I'm open to explaining it.
Hey,
Arnold?
anybody have questions? Oh yeah, I have lots of questions, but I don't think we have to. It's, you know, it's kind of like when we talked about threading and that kind of stuff before, but that's probably something that we should talk another time.
Now, threading is another, let's call it a beast. We can talk about it nearly a day. But interesting stuff, but yeah. Like example, if you want to change the static the whole time, because we got a time here, all right? Now, once again, we can do this. Just to quickly about the time and this, you're talking about threading. What I can do is create a procedure. I'm going to say update clock. And that's quite easy to do. Just update clock. And say OK. Then dumps it in here. And you watch over here. When you click on this little thing here, here it is. Then you just call it once in the initialization part. Then you say execution is present by call by code. So we're going to call it by code, which is this one here. And you want to say it runs indefinite times. It must update every second. And I'm going to put a delay just that you can see there is a marked delay. I'm going to say wait 10 seconds before we start updating the clock, right? And run in the background task in a thread without using context copy. So that means it is running in a separate thread. Go. See, 1, if you start counting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There you go. And then it will start updating. Oh, it's not. Oh, sorry. It won't update. I lie. It's just. I lie. I must put the window. I must tell it where to find it. Which window is this one? Window menu. Dot. Because it's running in a thread. Because you don't know where to find this window. Okay. It should work that way. I'll just make it shorter this time. If I remember correctly. One, 2, 3, 4. Okay. There's one update. For some reason now that I want to show it to you. Interesting.
So it gets called once then?
Am I doing something wrong here? Infinite times. I forgot to tick this box.
Times is once, yeah.
I forgot to tick this box. I think that's a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Still doesn't want to update it for me. Oh, got something wrong here. Let's take it off the thread. Oh no, we got it in the thread. It's running in a separate thread. So it's not gonna see this this time variable anymore because it's got a copy of it and that's the end of it.
Oh, it's
remember?
in the background. Yeah.
Because when you thread it, it'll take a copy of that variable as it creates that thread, and then afterwards it does know about it. So it can't update it, so it will get a copy of it. So that should work now because you're not running in a separate thread because it's with context. Should. No, it doesn't. I know it works. We've done it before.
Chris has changed it to system time.
Yeah, you can do that. I think it's taking a copy of it and not it will then take Yeah, he's right.
So we just update it.
You're right, Chris, because what we did is it takes a copy of it and it just stays on the same value the whole time because we're not updating the variable. You're right. Sorry. Being stupid. I'm not updating my variable. Okay,
Also, it was updating, but with the same stuff, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, it should
now
be.
We should change for 5. Change. Come on.
System daytime. Why doesn't it want to go? That's interesting. Immediately. You got me now. And now I used my other screens. They've got a. Oh, by the way, while we at it, WINDEV gives you quite a lot of examples on this, and I think they've got it over here even. It updates all the time, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they just say update, initialize, but where is one? One of them keeps updating. There we go. That also shows you this little symbol shows it now time. Okay, they just say now time. Now and sys date time is the same thing. But it should work either way. Why does it want to? Because they've got it there. Let's see what they've got there. Setting execution by code. Yes, we've got the same there. Delayed by 1 second. They're using without context. That means the copy is a separate thread. If you run the copy, it's working. The only difference between ours and theirs, execution 1 infinite times per second, delayed by 1 second, run without context. It's threaded. Just look at ours again. Execution indefinite 1 second. Oh, was that other one ticked over here? But they've got 5 seconds, but immediately. Let's just tick that one the same as theirs. Doesn't want to tick for some reason.
Sounds like examples are really good to look at. So
it doesn't want to let me tick this one now for some reason. Doesn't want to tick, but it should work.
Anyway, I know I took you off your topic, so.
But anyway, as you can see over here, it works. There it is, and we do the calculation of the time, and they practically do the same as what we've done. We only use the string to it, and they just have an entry block. But the point is still the same, same. And they've got that one running. We had that one running in the beginning. Don't know why he's not behaving with ours.
Chris can figure that out for us.
For some reason, it doesn't want to work with us today.
All right.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Any questions, anybody? I'll save it for the next series number 5 sessions. Oh, Terry, do you have a question? Oh, Terry says thank you.
Pleasure.
All righty.
All right.
Well, here goes.
Thanks, Arnold.
Thank you
for your time.
Thank you, and no, it's always nice to see this over again because it makes you think. Don't think so hard. Just.
Also, well, the reason why I also played around with my own screen is that you can see how easy to check it and put things into place. And the more you look at it, hopefully when you're starting up with WINDEV, it just makes it easier. I know, because when you just jump around and looking at these, it's not the same as actually seeing somebody putting code in and out and getting things done. But do yourself a favor, go and look it up in the tutorial, and then go look at these ones over here. There's quite a lot of interesting stuff. But like I say, it does help to see somebody else put code in and run around and see to tell you about it, because it kind of, you learn it, I think, a little bit quicker than just trying to figure out what they've done here. And because there's so much on the screen, you sometimes wonder if there's something else affecting this code what you don't see. But yeah, you only get used to it when you get kind of proficient at it and you realize, okay, this is on its own kind of thing. But when you're starting to learn app, this, I think, is sometimes a bit daunting to try to figure out what they've all done here.
Okay. So, till next time.
Have fun.
Thanks so much.
Enjoy
Have a
your
great
weekend.
weekend. Yep. Bye now.
You do. Cheers. Bye.
I'm stopping the recording.